It is the 2020 Church IT Network virtual conference. Woohoo! Finally, we're doing something. We can't meet physically, but we can certainly meet virtually, and that's what we're going to do. And it's going to be epic. And it's already been really awesome to see so many familiar faces and some folks that haven't seen before. So welcome to all those that are new to the Church IT Network. My name is Jason Powell. I'm the IT director at Granger Community Church. I'm on the leadership team of the Church IT Network, along with Jason Lee, Scott Miller, Matt Pugh, also helping tremendously with getting this conference off the ground has been Tyler Vance from Life Church, and Shelly and Mark Burleson. So huge thanks to those guys. We've got 5 weeks of presentations for you. We've got a small group component that Scott's going to talk to in a little bit, but we are super pumped that we finally get to make this thing happen. Just kind of a order of operations for today. So after we get done chatting here, we're going to go directly into a session by Travis Phipps from Enable to talk about Microsoft 365 stuff coming out of Ignite. For those of you that want to talk all things Google, G Suite and that stuff, we're going to have a link in the chat that's going to actually take you out of Zoom over into a Google Meet because it's a Google Talk. You're going to hop over into Google Meet. You're going to have 60 minutes of presentation and Q&A by a panel of some awesome folks like Jonathan Evans, Sean Ross, Carl Peterson. So if you're a Google shop, that's where you're going to want to go. However, at the end, you need to come back here because we're going to do the breakouts from Zoom. So we've got breakout rooms all ready to go. Everybody's kind of pre-staged. We've got moderators / leaders for each breakout. So at the end of the Google one, make sure that you come back here into Zoom so that you can participate in that. And yes, somebody's asking if we're recording, and this will be recorded, and we'll throw it up on YouTube and provide a code so you can get into the YouTube account at some point. So let's see, anything else? Man, I'm just, we do have 2 more slots of content that we would like to fill. And we'd kind of like to know from you guys and gals what topics you think should go into those slots. So if there's some really burning questions during this COVID pandemic, whatever you want to call it, that you would really like to have the group present, discuss, please send that to info@churchitnetwork.com, and we'll find some good presenters to make those happen. So Travis Phipps did mention earlier today that this is not the first time we've done a virtual conference of sorts. Some of you that remember way back in the early days of the Church IT Network, we did the Church IT podcast for almost 10 years. And we had it every other week for a long time, and then we went monthly, and then it kind of fizzled out. So this is sort of a new reboot on the Church IT podcast. And so we're super excited about it. But anyway, Scott Miller is going to tell you a little bit more about the breakout options, and then we'll get this thing cranking away. So Scott?
Yes, sir. I'm right here. So yeah, guys, one of the things that we've always talked about is just this whole thing, has always been about community. And as we were talking about this in the leadership team and just really kind of bummed that we weren't going to get to meet in person, we love seeing you guys and being with you guys. And, we've all been in a season right now, at least I can speak for myself. It's just been hard, right? It's been hard. Things have been different. It's been challenging. And so it is a bummer not to see everyone in person, but we still wanted to try to do the community thing as best we could online. We've all done a ton of online stuff over the last several months. And so that's really the point of what we're doing after sort of the learning time today that Travis is going to do. We really want to get into these smaller groups and just have a chance to just talk about kind of where we are and how we're doing, and be able to pray for each other and encourage each other and spur each other on, right? That's always been something we want to be about, as well as answer questions, right? And get in there and talk about the challenges we're facing, whether that's leadership or whether that's technical. And so each leader is going to kind of run their group as needed, right? And so they've got some guidelines, but really this is your time. This is for you, and this is just an opportunity for you to get encouraged, to get built into. And so we want you guys to use that time and make it really, really effective. And so that's the goal. And listen, you know this, if you've been around here with us long enough, we kind of make these things up as we go, right? To some degree. And so we've got 5 weeks of this instead of 3 days. So that gives us a lot of time to figure out what worked, what didn't work. And we would absolutely love your feedback. So, you know, if the small group time needs a little bit of reshuffling, or we need to tweak some things, we would love to do that week to week to week to make this better. And we really don't know where we're going from here, right? In terms of once these 5 weeks are over. So the goal is to build community, and the goal is to be able to have these groups be relationships that you take with you down the road, right? That these are people you can pick up the phone and call when you need help, right? And that's what we want to do. So I guess I'll leave it at that. I don't want to take too much time. I'd love to pray for us. And then at that point, introduce Travis and we'll get started. So if you guys would, let me pray. Father, we thank you that you are good, that you are good to us, that you love us, that you just desire to have a relationship with us. Since that we just pray that you gave it. We thank you that you gave us Jesus to come and die for us and bring us back to you. And that all we have to do is just accept that free gift. You loved us enough to send your son to die for us. And we thank you that we can come to your throne, we can approach you, we can trust you, and we know that you love us. And so just pray for our time today, and just ask you to open our hearts to what you would have for us during this time, and that we would just really leave today encouraged, that you would encourage our hearts, that you would just allow us to be reminded of your goodness and why we get to do what we do, and the joy that it is to get to serve as part of your kingdom and what you're doing here today. And so just pray for Travis as he presents, and for just also Jonathan and the guys that are doing the Google Talk as well. Just pray for just the information that they're going to give, and then also for our group leaders as we break into the small group time. Those discussions will be fruitful, and that you would just use that time as you would to do what you're going to do. And we don't even want to think that we can even know what it is you're going to do, but we know that that you will make good things happen, because that's who you are. And so, Father, just thanks for all these folks. Just thank you for the ministries that they each have, the way they're serving in their local ministries or churches. And man, we're just we're grateful for today. We're even in this season when we can't meet in person, that you've given us the skills and the ability and the technology to be able to meet online. And so, Father, we just give this time to you. We love you. We thank you for Jesus, and pray it in his name. Amen. All right, so now I get to turn it over to my friend, Travis Phipps, who's with Enable. A lot of you guys already know Travis. I don't think he needs much of an introduction. I think you may hold the record for, you may have done as many presentations as anybody with the Church IT network over the years. You've done quite a few. And so I'm gonna turn that over to Travis right now. And then those of you guys who are going to Google, if you look in the chat, the link is there, and we will see you guys back here shortly. So Travis, with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, and you can take it away.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, you know, Jason mentioned earlier that I was talking about the fact this wasn't our first virtual event. I actually was recalling sitting in IRC with a bunch of Ustream videos all over the screen, with everybody trying to do their own little video thing in addition to the podcast. So, oh, look, my numbers are dwindling. You sent all the Google people away, all 6 of them. I think we lost maybe 9 people.
Firing shots
sorry.
already.
If they weren't gone yet, I'll bet they are soon. No, I'm just kidding. They are certainly welcome to stick around. Yesterday, there was a pot getting started for how many Google people I could convert to Microsoft through this talk. So I don't know if we ever landed on the over-under on that, but all right. As Scott mentioned, my name is Travis. I'm with Enable Ministry Partners. For those of you that don't know about me or about our company, it has been our privilege to serve within the church IT space for many, many years, well before my time with the company. In fact, I came to learn about Enable by participating in this community. And so I have a great affinity for the Church IT Network, Church IT Roundtable, and it's absolutely my pleasure, my privilege to present today. For those of you that have heard me talk before, I am a very interactive presenter. So here's where I need your help. This is not a great interactive platform with 114 people all jumping on to speak at once, but we have this great chat box. So as I'm going along, if you have questions, if you have comments, if you want to correct something that I say incorrectly, which is totally legitimate and probably will happen more than once, post that up in chat. I know Scott and a few other leaders are going to keep an eye on the chat and kind of help moderate that. We will absolutely have time at the end to try to answer questions that have come in. But if there is something that is just not clear in the moment, or if a lot of people are asking right at once, Scott's going to interrupt me so that we can answer those questions kind of as we go. Because as I tell everybody that I teach with or that I train, my goal here is for you to learn something, not just to hear me speak. So I'm very interactive and I need that. So please do. All right. So everyone post their questions here for Floating Travis. That's right.
What about heckling? Can we heckle?
Heckling is totally allowed. And okay. I can choose whether to ignore it or not, but I don't know that I can ignore it. So it keeps popping up in front of the button, have to click to go to the next slide. So we'll see how that goes.
I was thinking audio heckling, not just
audio heckling should not be allowed, I feel like. Just, you know, I feel like that could get out of hand very quickly. So I'm sure I have heckled plenty of folks on this call and they would want to return the favor. So maybe we should try to minimize that. I can take it, I promise, but you know, interest of time and all that.
Right, well put, well put.
Okay, so the goal today is we're going to talk about Microsoft 365. Specifically, I was asked to speak about things that were announced coming soon. Travis, you can mute Jason. Oh, that's a good point. I am a co-host. I do have power. Who knew? I don't know how to use Zoom, but apparently I have power if I did. So I appreciate that. Today the goal is to talk about post-Ignite, what's coming to Microsoft 365. So just in case you aren't aware, Ignite is Microsoft's annual conference where they talk about all the cool new things that they're going to be rolling out over the course of the next year. And so this talk is mostly going to be stuff that was announced at Ignite. I'm probably sprinkling in other things that either you already know or maybe don't know, but it's just, you know, cool Microsoft things that I think everybody should know. So, all right, with that said, next slide. So this actually came up yesterday. I hadn't necessarily planned to talk about it, but it was asked yesterday, and I thought, well, this is a good thing to talk about then. Office 365 and Microsoft 365. What's the difference? By now, I'm sure you've heard both terms interchangeably, and you would not be alone in not knowing the difference. I would argue I don't think half of Microsoft truly knows the difference. Microsoft marketing clearly likes to use the term Microsoft in everything. So of course they want you to refer to Microsoft 365 as everything. But the truth is there really is a nuanced difference. And I say nuanced, I don't even know if that's the right term. Office 365 is the thing that we have known and loved for a very long time. But what Microsoft has continued to do is they've expanded the platform. Office 365 really is productivity applications. So Outlook, Word, Excel, right? And even Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, the server technologies underneath those applications. So Office 365 is all about productivity. Whereas Microsoft 365 is taking the productivity tools, the Office 365 stuff, and then combining other pieces along with it. So really at its heart, Microsoft 365 is a bundle of multiple products in one SKU or one thing that you can purchase. So you might be familiar with the Microsoft 365 Business Premium offering that is available to all 501c3s. You get 10 of them for free, and you can pay $5 per additional user beyond that. Office 365, of course, has Office 365 Business and Office 365 Enterprise plans. We really don't have time to cover what all that means. Just know that technically Office 365 and Microsoft 365 are different, but Microsoft 365 is what you're going to hear Microsoft always talking about and referring to because, of course, they want you to use more of their stuff. Okay, here's the other thing you have to know. A lot of what we're going to talk about today is from the Ignite conference, meaning it's been announced. That does not mean it's available yet. That also doesn't mean it's not available yet. Some of it is, some of it isn't. A lot of things are in preview. And in case you aren't familiar, Microsoft's terminology is in preview. That's what they mean. And what they mean by that is it's perpetually in beta. So, you know, Google kind of forged this path years ago with everything as a beta product forever and ever and ever. Well, Microsoft and Apple and everybody likes it. They just want to come up with their own term for it. Microsoft calls it in preview. So some of the stuff you're going to see, it's here today. Some of it's going to be here next week. Some of it might show up today. It is Patch Tuesday. Who knows what they're going to release today? And some of this stuff might get here this year. Some of it might be here next year, but it should all be coming sometime in the next 12 months. It's also important to know that you have some control over how quickly you see some of these things. So most things that Microsoft rolls out, they do kind of in phases or in stages. If you have not yet set your tenant or some users in your tenant into the targeted release area, then you could do that and you might get stuff before others. You might not, but hey, it can't hurt. And then there is this new thing that they've just announced for Teams specifically, where they're going to be offering a public preview channel. Again, in preview, right? I checked my tenant earlier today. I still can't turn that on, but who knows, maybe you can. If you want new Teams features before everybody else. Okay, so
you always want new features, right?
Well, who doesn't want new features? But maybe you want you and your IT technology people to have new features, but maybe not everybody to have new features. So there are some ways to control that. You can always Google it. I mean, you can always Bing this stuff, right? This is a Microsoft presentation, so you should Bing things.
Can I interject also while I'm here?
You already have.
I know, right? I find it frustrating that the version that I'm on Teams can be the same version that somebody else has, yet we have different features. I don't know if you're going to speak to that at some point, but I'm going to be quiet now because that's frustrating.
If I could explain that well, I certainly would. The short version is this: feature availability is controlled by a couple of different things, really more than two, but we'll go with a couple of different things. One is, do you have the right version, right? So you have to have the right version of the platform. And then that feature has to be enabled for your tenant or your user account as well. So take Zoom, for instance. We were testing some things yesterday in Zoom, and we realized Zoom has some capabilities, but if you aren't on the latest version of the Zoom app, you don't get those capabilities. Well, that kind of makes sense to us, but in Microsoft's land, that can be reversed. You can absolutely be on the latest version of the app, but that feature may not be turned on for you yet. And there is not today any way for you to really control that. They are claiming that this new public preview would be a way for you to kind of get in the front of the line to get some of those features. So there you go. It doesn't have to make sense in order to be reality, right? Let's just be clear. All right, so Azure. Here's some stuff that has landed or is landing in Azure that has been announced at Ignite. New regions. Well, guess what? They're making new data centers. Aha. Most of those are worldwide, although there have been a few new ones in the US. But in general, they've kind of saturated the US areas, so they're continuing to expand worldwide. Azure Availability Zones is a new functionality that has to do with replication of your services and things between different zones or different regions to make it more highly available. Azure Resource Mover. And by the way, a lot of these things are things that probably don't apply to you and your organizations. Some of the larger organizations, you might care about these things, but it's interesting to know what they're doing. Azure Resource Mover is a way to take resources that live in one region and migrate them to another. You would kind of think, hey, it's always been the cloud, that's always been a thing. That's not true. So it's harder than you might think, or it has been. Azure Migrate. Azure Migrate is about taking what you have on premises and moving it into the cloud. Like, hey, go scan my stuff and just go replicate all those VMs and move it to the cloud for me. That sounds great in theory, but don't do it. The last thing you want to do is be paying for the cloud version of what you've over provisioned, most likely on premises, right? So on premises, we always build really big and we do extra capacity and all those kinds of things. When you're in the cloud, you really don't want to pay for all that. You really should re-architect and reimagine how you do things if you're moving workload into the cloud. Backup Center. So if you have used any Azure services, infrastructure, SQL, that kind of thing, you might be familiar with Azure Backup, where you can run backups natively inside of Azure, but you might also recognize that you always had to do that individually on each resource. talk about a pain in the butt. If you got a bunch of VMs and you have to go manage the backups for each one of them individually. So Azure Backup Center is a single pane of glass, manage all of your backups for infrastructure as a service, VMs, also on-prem servers, SQL, Azure Files, things like that. So that's really nice. If you're using much in Azure and you're doing backups, you're really going to like Backup Center. Oh yeah, of course, there's new hardware, there's new processors. So of course, that means you have to have new types of VMs, which means if you've ever tried to use the Azure pricing calculator to figure out what it costs for VMs, it just got harder because now there's more options. You're welcome.
Yes, that's awesome.
And then that's what everybody wants, right? And then we have the Windows Admin Center. If you have not used it, I'll be honest, I've not used it much at all, but it is a very nice kind of single pane of glass management for on-prem servers and cloud servers kind of in one place. And now instead of having to have a machine to run that on, you're going to be able to run that directly in the Azure portal. All right, Windows Virtual Desktop. So if you haven't heard of this, it's not new. You probably have heard of Virtual Desktop Infrastructure, VDI. VMware has been doing this forever. Other virtualization platforms have been doing this forever, but the pricing has always been a little rough, and doing it in the cloud has never been very easy. It took a lot of work. Well, Windows Virtual Desktop is Microsoft providing the infrastructure for you to point and click and say, I want some desktops in the cloud, and I want to be able to assign users to them. And then I want to be able to say, well, they all have the same applications or they don't. They all get their own VMs or it's a shared workspace, like all those different options in a more simple single pane of glass management. That's Windows Virtual Desktop. The idea is, well, now you don't need to provide equipment to your users. They just use whatever equipment they have or maybe their own personal device, because all you're doing is providing a virtual desktop in the cloud, and that's what they access. That's where their data is. That's where their applications are. It sounds good in theory. It's not cheap. I'll just be honest. And as more and more of us, I hope, are moving into the software as a service platform of Office 365, Microsoft 365, and Teams, well, you have to question, is there really a need for managing that virtual desktop at the expense that that brings? I would argue for most churches, it's not. It's not worth it. Power Automate Desktop. This one actually surprised me just a little bit. And then I thought, why did that surprise you? Obviously, they would do this. But if you are familiar with Flow, Microsoft Flow, or If This Then That, or Zapier, or something like that. So Microsoft has had a product called Flow to do kind of automation stuff in the cloud. Well, they renamed that a while ago to Power Automate. I don't know why. They just did. But now what they've announced is a new Power Automate desktop application. So now not only are you stuck with interacting with APIs and webhooks and things cloud only, but now you can actually have a desktop application that can perform desktop-like actions like transferring files, screen scraping PDFs, doing other Windows-based tasks. So that's kind of cool to tie in a local workstation experience to what is a native cloud experience as well.
So like
okay, this one freaked me out.
Desktop, if this, then that.
Yeah, desktop version of this, if this, and that. Yeah. So, you know, auto hotkey has been around for a long time. In my mind, I'm thinking kind of like that, right? But tied into what Power Automate already does in the cloud. This one.
Backups. Sorry.
What about backups?
Well, could you use?
You should do them.
Yeah. What? Really? Could you use it to back up files? New file plops in a folder, send it to X.
That certainly sounds like it would fit within the realm of what they have provided. I don't know for sure, but that certainly does sound legitimate, like a legitimate use. Microsoft Premonition. Just the name alone caught my attention. Basically, they're trying to predict virus activity. You can imagine where this came from. You can imagine where this is going. No, it didn't start with COVID, but of course it got a big jump due to it. All right. Cortana. If you haven't heard, Cortana is the voice assistant that can't decide what it wants to be. Microsoft started out with Cortana as a competitor to the Google Assistant or to Amazon's Alexa. And they kind of figured out that, well, there doesn't need to be a third one of those. And so what they've said is they're kind of demoting Cortana to just be a voice assistant. I don't know what that means really, because it seems like she's still kind of doing a lot of the same things, but you'll notice that she's not as prominent in Windows as she once was. She tends to be more of a background process and more of a web platform process. Doing things like sending you that daily briefing email. If you haven't seen that, that's kind of cool. Reminding you about things that maybe you forgot about. Being able to play your emails in the mobile apps. Anything that's voice powered is powered by Cortana these days. All right, Microsoft Endpoint Manager. So if you have been wrestling with this whole, hey, I've always used group policy to manage all of my computers, but now I have all these Macs and, oh, everybody tells me I should get rid of Active Directory, but how am I going to manage these computers? Well, Microsoft Endpoint Manager is Microsoft's solution for you. Now, there are other ways to crack this nut, but this is the native Microsoft thing, right? So if you have heard of SCCM, or System Center Configuration Manager, that's an on-premises only product for managing workstations and servers. If you've heard of Intune, well, that's a cloud-only solution for managing workstations, being able to push software, push configuration policies and things like that. And so Microsoft Endpoint Manager is a umbrella term that really integrates both the Intune and the SCCM experience. You don't have to use SCCM in order to use Microsoft Endpoint Manager. You can just do the native cloud parts powered by Intune. You can do all sorts of cool device management things. Different Microsoft 365 SKUs already include Endpoint Manager as a part of the suite. But if, for instance, you're on an Office 365 SKU, well, you don't get this natively. You would have to also purchase something else that includes it, or transition to a Microsoft 365 SKU. See how they did that? There you go. A couple of cool things that I did note that were announced tonight. One is they are continuing to enhance how they support and what they support on Mac OS, which is cool. They're still playing catch up. They're still not there. They do not touch the likes of Jamf or Mosel or some of these more native Mac OS MDMs, but certainly their goal is to get there, and they've made great progress. The shared iPad for business, I think, is great. This is a thing that has needed to come along for some time now. They've had it in education where individual users can sign into the iPad and it's kind of a different user profile. Well, now they're offering that for business where you literally have a split partition on your iPad. You sign in with your Azure AD account, it's all your work stuff. You sign out of that and now you're in it with all your personal stuff. And it really does keep them separate. That's pretty cool. Office apps and reporting. So one of the things that Microsoft is very aware of is that they have been rolling out new technology like nobody's business. It's hard to keep up with, hence why we have conversations like this from time to time. There's so much always changing. Well, here's the thing. Your users are having a hard time keeping up, and that's probably because you're having a hard time keeping up. And you're probably telling them about some of these things, or Microsoft is telling them about some of these things, but do you really know who's using what? Probably not. So Microsoft is trying to improve that. They're trying to bring more visibility to admins to know what tools and what technology pieces people are using, which ones are working, which ones are having problems, in a way that actually makes it useful, something you can do something with. So one of the things that they're working on, I'm actually going to skip the first bullet point. I'll come back to that. So more reporting on usage is coming. Some of it's already available. More is coming. This productivity score is a new thing that really just launched, which the effort there is to provide information on the people experience, so how people are communicating and collaborating, and also the technology experience, what's working, what's having problems, that kind of thing. So that's really cool, and I'm excited to see where they take this. I'm hoping it's finally the thing that is a digestible amount of information. Microsoft has always had this problem of giving you a ton of stuff, but you never knew which thing to focus on, and they're attempting to bring that together in a way that's useful in the productivity score, and I'm excited about that. Just in case you weren't aware, the Office channels, update rings, whatever they're calling them this month, have changed names again. This again was a pre-Ignite thing. As of today, you can be on the current channel, in your Office apps. You can be on the monthly enterprise channel for your apps, or you can be on the semi-annual enterprise channel for your apps. And I'll just short circuit this for you. You want to probably be on the monthly enterprise channel. The current channel is the one that's like bleeding edge. They're constantly doing new updates, sometimes multiple times a month, new features. That's disruptive for your users, just FYI. Maybe you should be on that one. Most of your staff probably should be on the monthly enterprise. So every single month they're pushing out a new update. Obviously it has security fixes, but it also could have feature enhancements or improvements. And then the other option is to do semi-annual, which means you get security updates all throughout the year, but you only get new features twice a year. I think it's like January and July or something. I don't know why they picked those months. That does not align with Windows, but that's where they're at today. Next week, they'll probably change it again, because this is probably at least the 4th naming convention and structure for Office update channels that I can recall, at least the 4th.
So say that again. IT people should be on which one? And
I think IT people, you should be on the bleeding edge. You should suffer along with the rest of us and be on the current channel. Get all the new bells and whistles right away. Test them out, give feedback, right? Your staff probably belong on the monthly enterprise channel, because you want them to have the new things relatively soon, but you want them to be kind of baked before they get them. So meaning the features, not the people, just to clarify. All right. Outlook Mobile. If you're not using this, shame on you. Yes, I'm looking at every one of you iPhone users that taps the mail icon whenever you go to get your email on your mobile phone. Shame on you. Outlook Mobile is a great experience. I might be biased, but I love it. You should use it. It really is that great. I promise. And so a couple new things that are coming or have already come to Outlook Mobile. Play my emails. I've not tried this. I find this weird, but supposedly you can tell Cortana to start playing your emails for you. I don't know. Like my inbox is gigantic, so I don't know how she decides what to play, but feel free to knock yourself out with that. Voice commands. Now this one kind of excites me. The ability to tell her to write a new message or delete that email or something, that could be pretty cool. So maybe give that a shot. Reactions. Now this one, I'm loving this. How many of us have kind of adopted the idea that we react to posts or chats in Teams, or we do it in Facebook, and we do it in every social media platform, and then we get emails and we don't want to have to write thanks or yeah, that sounds great or okay, or like how many of us have figured out that you can press the Windows key and the period and get the emoji selector, at least in Windows, and then you can pick the thumbs up icon. So I'm loving that reactions are coming to Outlook Mobile so that you can thumbs up and all that kind of stuff to emails. I think that's going to be great. And then QR Connect. So the concept there is, instead of having people have to go download the app and be able to sign in and all that, basically Outlook on the desktop can display a QR code, you scan it, and it just sets up your account for you. So that could be kind of nice, helping people get set up faster. Outlook for Mac. I saw this was being discussed earlier. Yes, I'm going to talk about Outlook for Mac. So here's the thing. Up in the top right-hand corner, you got the new Outlook toggle, right? You should totally check this out as an IT person if you haven't. If you're supporting Mac users, you need to go see what this looks like. You need to recognize that, yes, it does look an awful lot like Outlook on the web. Yes, it's officially called Outlook on the web. It's not called Outlook Web Access anymore. So you can't say OWA, you have to say OTOW. Or you can still say OWA and then still call it Outlook on the web. That's what I do. All right, so it is not accidental that the new Outlook in macOS looks an awful lot like Outlook on the web. Why might that be? Well, because all Outlook is going to start to look and operate an awful lot like Outlook on the web. That is the future of Outlook. That is their intention. Yes, especially on the Mac right now, there's a lot of stuff it doesn't do. So shared mailboxes, no. What else? There's a couple other common ones, but I can't think right now off the top of my head. You guys should put those in the chat and we can talk about those in Q&A. But it is good to know what's happening. It's good to see what's going on. Just know that it's not fully baked yet. So you need to be ready to tell your people to go untick the box when they say they can't figure something out in Outlook on the Mac. All right. This is so weird. I have to wait for the chat bubble to disappear before I can go to the next slide. I don't get this. If only somebody could build a better platform for meetings. Oh, Teams. So Teams
Nicely done.
The place to get stuff done, to get work done. Okay, so I did this as its own slide because I wanted to make this very clear, right? This is Microsoft's mantra around Teams. Teams is the place to get work done, right? Now, that has been Microsoft's mantra since 2017 when they first introduced it. And back in 2017, when they started saying that, everybody went, huh? I don't get it. I don't see it. But now here we are in 2020, and I can tell you that there are churches all over the country and all over the world, businesses the world over, that have quickly adopted this modern office work style of a chat-based experience with native and integrated file collaboration and sharing. And when you get into the framework enough that you can live your day in Microsoft Teams, you're probably either going to love it or hate it. But I will say that everything all in one place with a great search experience that ties it all together, man, it's nice. As a technology person, I love that it's kind of all there together. And I don't have to spend so much time figuring out how to organize and file away stuff. It's just all there for me. That experience of moving from platform to platform whenever I switch to my phone or I'm using my Mac for the day or whatever, and it's all the same, wow, it's amazing. So Teams is the place to get work done. Enough said, right? So if you're using Microsoft and you haven't checked out Teams, you definitely need to. And then we're going to talk about all sorts of new stuff that's coming. By the way, I don't think I have to remind you guys to be chatting your questions because I keep seeing all sorts of conversations. So I hope you're saying good things and not mean things. I'll ignore the mean ones later. But
they're mostly
just
nice.
A reminder, they're mostly what?
They're mostly nice.
Okay, all right, that's good enough. As long as we're, oh man, I had a great point. This is not an exhaustive list, right? So what we're talking about today is not everything that got discussed at Ignite. Everything I'm about to show you and talk about with Teams, this is far from everything that got announced about Teams. Teams is clearly the thing that has gotten tons of attention. It was getting that before coronavirus, and it certainly got accelerated during coronavirus, right? So just, okay, enough said. So what stuff is coming to Teams? Team templates. This one, at least in my tenant, I have it. The tenant, New City Church out in North Carolina has it, and I know because I was training them last week, and I went, oh, look, you have templates. So templates are kind of cool. If you have a specific setup or structure that you want to create, maybe for each ministry or each department, and you want them to have certain tabs and certain channels and that kind of thing, you can design a template for that. And as you deploy new ministries, new departments, you click a button, create it from the template, and you're done. That's pretty awesome. Oh, by the way, this is kind of going backwards a little bit. I forgot to mention, Teams being the place to get work done. The one question that comes up all the time is, well, what about email? Email's not in Teams. It will be. Now that's not officially, that did not officially get announced at Ignite, but I have seen mock-ups. There is a strong user voice discussion around this going on right now. There will be an app in Teams on the left-hand side app bar for Outlook. Guess what? It's just Outlook on the web, right? So again, all Outlook is going to become Outlook on the web some way, somehow. Search. If you've ever used the search bar in Teams, you've seen how well it functions, but you've also seen how clunky it is to narrow down to what you're looking for. So they are making the search more context aware. So depending on where you're at when you search, now it'll be a little more filtered and be easier to find what you're looking for, whether it's a chat or a conversation or a file or something like that. That cannot come soon enough because it's great how well it works. And by the way, if you haven't used the search bar in Teams, go do it. You'll love it. Here's a masterful tip for you. hit the slash key and see all the little shortcuts you have up there, especially if you're using this as your phone system or you're chatting a lot. Being able to slash call and type somebody's name is amazing, game changing. All right, members per team. How many of you knew that you could have 10,000 members in an individual team? Show of hands, anybody? How many felt like 10,000 wasn't enough and you really wanted an all church team with all 25,000 of your weekend attendees? That is now a thing, or soon will be. So I would love someone to take the together mode picture of their first 25,000 member team in a meeting. You can't have meetings that big. Those are limited to 1,000, I think. But anyway, there you go. All church conversation channels. SharePoint home site in Teams. So you'll notice that SharePoint doesn't get talked about much. In this presentation, I think this will be it. At Ignite in total, there wasn't a lot. That's not to say that SharePoint is not still a big thing. The fact is all file storage lives on top of SharePoint. So whether you're talking OneDrive, Teams, SharePoint itself, and now even Stream, all file storage is living on top of SharePoint. But here's a thing that we keep running into as we have more and more churches moving into Teams. There's always those shared documents like HR forms and finance reimbursement forms and that kind of stuff that you're like, well, we need that to live somewhere. Can we just do that as a tab in our all staff team, or how do we manage that? So I'm actually really excited. They're making SharePoint home sites, which really is just a way to have a SharePoint site that you create and you stick it as an app on the left-hand side. So just like you have chat and Teams and calendar and all the things along the left, you're now going to be able to pin a SharePoint site, and that can kind of be your intranet. Nobody else has to know it's SharePoint, right? Just your communications team, HR, whoever manages it. But I think it makes a great experience. Again, if Teams is the place you tell everybody to go get work done, the more they can do inside of Teams, the better. For the 5 of you around the country who own an ARM64 device, like a Surface Pro X, you now have a native app. I'm slightly jealous. I would love to have better battery life on my Surface, but I don't have an ARM-based Surface, so there you go. Tasks, we'll talk more about tasks later, but you're going to be able to create those from inside of individual chats and channels. Webinars, if you are using the live event feature of Teams, then you're really hosting webinars. And one of the limitations, Enable faces this a lot because we do all of our webinars through Teams. We have to use a different system to let people sign up, and the reporting and stuff is not that great. But now we're going to have the ability to do all the sign up registrations and all that kind of stuff right inside of Teams natively, and should get better reporting as a result. So we're excited about that. I know at least Watermark has done some stuff with live events. I don't know if other churches have, but that's cool. Approvals. This one I'm excited about too, because one of the things that you've always been able to do workflows inside of SharePoint, and you've always been able to do things in Flow or Power Automate to kind of move a thing down a path, but it's always been kind of clunky and it always felt kind of like forgotten. So there's a modern experience being developed called Approvals. And the idea is there's a basic app inside of Teams for building approval workflow processes. And now you're going to have a native experience inside of a chat or a channel or the approvals app itself to do a thing, send it to the next person for approval, send it to the next person for approval, send it to the next person, and just have that workflow engine right there inside of Teams. From what I've seen, it looks very simple, which is brilliant to me. Simple is better for that kind of stuff. We want end users doing these things for themselves, not IT always having to go figure it out and support it day in and day out.
Preach.
And then open directly in the desktop apps. This can't come fast enough, and I cannot figure out when it's coming. But you know how when you go to open a file in Teams, it actually opens the web version of Word or Excel in the Teams app, and then you have to click open in desktop app, or it's multi-click or whatever. Coming soon. You're going to have the ability in Teams to set that you want every time you click on a Word or Excel document, it just automatically opens in the desktop application for you. That'll be brilliant.
What?
Cannot happen soon enough. It will be an individual user setting though. So it'll be one of those things you have to document and teach people. It will not be an admin thing you get to go do for them. But that's okay, because that's how this is supposed to work, right?
That's awesome.
All right.
Hey, quick interruption.
Go for it.
For everybody in the room, if you could take and change your Zoom username to your first name, last name. That would greatly help the breakout room coordination. Right now, if your name's just Bob C, we don't really know. It's hard to match that up against the list that we imported.
And add your email to the end of it. So like it would be like matt.pugh@matt.pugh@mcleanmobile.org. So that way I can match those emails as well. Thank you.
Teams meetings. So obviously doing meetings inside of Teams is amazing. If you haven't done it, you should. You can have up to 1,000 people in an interactive meeting like this one. I don't want 1,000 people in an interactive meeting like this one. I think that would be a little unwieldy, but hey, look, you know, Microsoft's going to let you do whatever you want to do. Together mode. If you haven't seen Together mode, it's kind of cool. It's what the NBA used for all of their games this season, where you could be sitting on the sidelines on big TVs and you were together watching the game. Well, that was all powered through Microsoft Teams, and it's basically a virtual background that it's shared. So it cuts out your little body, like mine is here, and it puts you inside of a shared scene. Right now, the only scene is kind of a classroom, an auditorium classroom, but coming soon, there are going to be more virtual Together mode scenes. And so look forward to that. Custom layouts. So kind of like Zoom has done here, where I can be floating in front of my presentation and I have the ability, I can actually move myself around if I wanted to. I don't know if you knew that existed in Zoom, but soon that will also exist inside of Teams. So that's kind of cool. And oh yeah, and as a result of that, coming along with that, the presenter now can define the view for everybody. So one of the things about Teams and like Together mode and that kind of thing, each person gets to pick how they're viewing it, but Teams is actually going to allow the presenter to design how everybody gets to view it going forward, so that you can ensure that everybody's seeing the same experience the way you intended. I think that's kind of cool. Breakout rooms. Breakout rooms are coming in October. Yep, October. There you go. Meeting recap. Automatically have recording, transcript files, etc. available post-meeting. This is really cool. If you've done Teams meetings and you've tried to use the functionality of the transcripts and the recordings and stuff, you found that it kind of just drops it all in chat, but it's not very organized. So the new meeting recap screen is actually going to be like, you can go click on it and immediately have access to your stuff kind of all in one pane, especially helpful for people that weren't able to make the meeting and have to catch up. Did I mention breakout rooms are coming in October? Yes, I meant October 2020, but don't go look, they're not there yet. So, you know, sometimes stuff gets delayed. All right, but they are coming, hopefully very soon, maybe as soon as today. I genuinely don't know, but we all want them, so hopefully they happen quickly. Forms or polls inside of meetings. This has been a high request, the ability to have a poll that you want to put in front of everybody in the meeting and let them vote, right? So there you go. That's coming. End of meeting warning. That's what it sounds like. Device handoff. This is great if you happen to find yourself using a mobile device and a desktop or laptop device, and you start the meeting in one place and then you need to join it from the other because you need to do whatever. Now you've got the ability to do that. That's actually live now for most, if not everybody, which is kind of cool. So start the meeting on one device, pick it up in another. Mute all. You can mute everybody, and then you can even prevent their ability to unmute themselves. Very handy if you have 1,000 people in your Teams meeting, I'm just thinking. And then spotlight user, you can, kind of make one person's video show up and kind of be spotlighted instead of, everybody. All right. By the way, what am I shooting for timeline-wise? I feel like I need to be wrapping this up if we're getting to Q&A. Is that true?
I think we started about 10 after.
Okay.
So we should probably wrap this up at 3:10.
All right. 3:10. I've got an hour and like 17 minutes to go. That's amazing. For those of us in Central Time, we're doing great. Hope you're enjoying listening to me. All right. Teams phone system. If you haven't checked this out, it's really cool. Yes, Teams can be your phone system with actual phone numbers that people can dial in, you can dial out. If you have used it though, you have found the experience to suck. I mean, not be great on at least the desktop side, where it was like a different page for your call history, a different page for your voicemail, a different page for your contacts. They're going to bring all that together in one view. Much, much better. Collaborative calling. So you can have calls that route to a channel. So call queues can actually go to a channel, so multiple people can be responsible for answering instead of it just going to one person. That's kind of cool. More phone hardware. If you have tried to buy Teams phones, you've found that there's not a lot of options really. They're all kind of the same experience, and they're a little on the pricey side, especially if you're trying to throw phones into common areas or into classrooms. So new hardware is on the way to be a better experience for that. And then this is really cool. If you are a 501c3, which I'm guessing most on this call are, you have the ability to have the Microsoft Voice Bundle, a nonprofit voice bundle, and that pricing is $14 per user per month. That includes the phone system license for the user. It includes the domestic calling plan, so having an actual phone number that Microsoft would provide your phone service, excuse me, and then the audio conferencing option as well. So it's all bundled together. Used to be, if you kind of put all those together under nonprofit, you were paying 17 and a half, almost 18 bucks. So now it's only 14 as a bundle. That's great. That can be added to any other SKU. So you can be on E plans and still have the voice bundle added, even though it's a business SKU. That's kind of awesome. And then if you're not aware, if that's a little pricey at your size, maybe once you have 30, 40, 50 people on staff or more, paying $14 per gets a little pricey. So you do have the option of providing your own service through a SIP carrier of your choosing and using a device called an SBC, a Session Border Controller, to connect your SIP trunk provider with Microsoft Teams through what they call direct routing. You can host that SBC yourself, either physically or virtually, or there are companies out there where you can just pay a per user fee and they will host the SBC for you. So different ways to skin that cat. Just know that it's pretty cool to have your phone system inside of Teams. Chat. You guys could quit chatting so I can hit next. That'd be great. Oh, see, there's another one, Jason Powell. Teams rooms. Some of you have seen this, some of you haven't. So you might be familiar with a Zoom room where it's packaged hardware that kind of creates a native experience. You walk into the room, there's a little touch screen device, you just join your meeting and you're done. It's a great experience for users. Microsoft has the same thing with Teams rooms. They're adding some capabilities around, touchless join and proximity join, so you don't have to go touch the shared device in the room for, COVID reasons. Capacity notifications to know if a room is full, again, COVID, and then Teams panels, so an actual door display that's integrated to the whole Teams room experience, so that the calendar for the room is displayed, on a device at the door. I'm going to start talking really fast here. Stream, it's going away as we know it. So Stream has always been like the internal YouTube where you could go post videos or host videos inside of your tenant, but only people inside of your tenant could access them. Well, that platform is actually going away as we know it. They're going to move all of that video content into SharePoint or OneDrive, and Stream is kind of becoming more of an aggregator of all video across the entire 365 ecosystem. So regardless of where your video lives, Stream would kind of be the interface to see it and share it and all those things. Microsoft 365 Defender, just know that they've rebranded all their security stuff and it's Defender branded. So, there you go. OneDrive is getting a few extra things. I think the coolest one, two coolest ones to me are move and keep sharing. So if you have something in your OneDrive and you decide to move it to a SharePoint or a Teams file area, whatever you have shared, all the sharing links you've created will stay as long as you use the native move experience. That's really cool. And then sync admin reports, the ability as an admin to see the sync status of everybody's stuff in their own OneDrives. Microsoft Lists, if you've used Smartsheet, things like that, Microsoft Lists is kind of their version of this. Think of it like a web-based interactive spreadsheet with smarts and intelligence. And tasks, gosh, there's not enough time to talk about this. The task experience inside of the Microsoft ecosystem has been fragmented and fractured for a very long time, and they are working to bring that together. It will not happen as fast as any of us would like, but the idea is you have to do for your personal task items. And yes, that is synced to the task experience in Outlook. And then you have Planner, where you can have tasks related to a plan or a project that you're working on. And the to-do experience can show you all of those tasks, regardless of where they've been assigned to you across any of the platforms within the Microsoft ecosystem. And yes, there is currently a Planner app inside of Teams that you can put on the left-hand side that will show you both your personal to-do items and your planner assigned items. And yes, they are going to rename that to the Tasks app. And yes, it was supposed to have already happened. And yes, they've delayed it and I don't know why. And no, I don't know when it's going to happen. So there you go. But the idea is they're trying to call everything a task. It's either personal to you or it's been assigned from other people. So there you go. Whew. Okay. Did I leave any time for Q&A? 10 minutes. Are there any Qs that we can try to A?
Yeah, I was just looking at the list. There were not a whole lot of like consistent questions that we got over and over again. And so I think there were a couple things that came up about, SMS messages in Teams, if that was ever going to be considered. I know folks have talked about that.
Yeah, so SMS
and
inside
then
of
the other
Teams.
question of,
Oh,
and
yeah.
the other question, sorry, so just
No, go
throw
ahead.
that one out. And then also one just around private channels and just some of the differences with private channels and the things that you can't do inside of private channels versus public channels. There seems to be quite a few things that obviously are not feature parity on that.
Yeah, so I can't give you the exhaustive list, but I can certainly discuss that a little bit. So SMS first. SMS is the thing that everybody wants because it's the thing that apparently all church staff use for all communication to everybody in the church, right? Is text messaging. As of today, there is no native experience for doing SMS inside of Teams. But Microsoft has committed that it is coming if you are using a Microsoft calling plan. What they have not said is they've not provided a timeline. They have not provided any pricing information, have no idea what to expect on that front, but it is something they are exploring. The really big question to me, and that we continue to investigate and try to solve for, and if anybody else has a solution for it, I'd love to hear it. But what about those of us that are using an SBC to provide our phone service, because that's certainly more economical at our scale and at our size? I am not aware today of a way to bring SMS as a component of your Teams experience. There are some solutions that you could do SMS in a separate platform with your same phone number, but then it's like, well, everything is in Teams except text messaging. Like, that's not very user-friendly. So if anybody has any ideas on that, I'd love to hear it. Private channel limitations. The biggest one that we run into is planner. Right now today, no planner in a private channel. There are some others, and so if anybody wants to shout out what those are, that would be great, but that's the one that we tend to run into the most. Jason Lee says no meeting scheduling. So I personally find meetings inside of channels to be a very confusing end user experience anyway, but that is a great point. You can't do meeting scheduling in a private channel. The reason for that, by the way, is when you create a private channel, you're actually creating a separate team site in SharePoint behind the scenes, and they have not created all the plumbing to have all of these things tie together to that second or third or fourth team site that has some affiliation to a team, because it's all supposed to live inside the same Office 365 group. Like, it's not a simple engineering challenge, to say the least. I saw somebody ask about known folder move for Mac. There have been no official announcements about known folder move for Mac.
Come on.
They are continuing to investigate it and explore it, and that is all that they have committed to at this point. I certainly had hoped that with the announcement of Big Sur, we would all get a great surprise, but I have not seen that happen. Unless somebody watched the rest of the Apple thing and can tell me that they announced it, that would be really fun, but I don't think so.
It was very poor form of Apple to schedule their event, like kind of on top of ours.
I agree. Wholeheartedly agree.
A question, Travis, that came in about, the advantage of a private channel over another team, right? Over creating more teams.
That one's hard, because the reality is every situation and circumstance is kind of unique and different on that. The way I typically teach this and describe this to people is, in general, we recommend a team per campus or a team per department or ministry, maybe broken down by campus. Like, there's different ways to crack that nut depending on your church structure. But typically, if what you're saying is, well, we need a space for these 3 people to have private files and private conversations, because they're the leadership of this ministry that actually houses, 30 other people. Well, they probably don't need their own team for that. If everything they're doing is related to the ministry that they're already a group grouped into within that team, then a private channel in that team most likely is the right answer. Where separate teams make sense generally is something that is going to be cross-departmental, cross-campus, cross-ministry, or engaging with volunteers. Absolutely always, if you're engaging with volunteers, you want a separate team for that. Because when you invite a guest into a team, they have access to everything in the team. You cannot invite a guest into a private channel, just FYI. So if you're engaging volunteers, definitely another team.
Okay.
I see.
Go ahead. A couple of questions in there about automatic syncing, right? So that you don't have to set, so if you're in a member of a team, automatically having OneDrive sync that SharePoint site down, any plist settings or ways to do that that you are aware of or know anything about?
Yeah, so you can do it, you shouldn't. That's the short version. Again, the point is you need to be teaching and educating your staff how they are to manage and access their data. And that means putting them in the driver's seat of how they get to the things that they care about. So if your staff are asking you, hey, how do I sync this to my computer? Your response should be to provide them training and education on how to do it for themselves, not you doing it for them. And so I have a very strong opinion about this. Hey, we're going to automatically sync everybody's team sites for them. I personally think that is the wrong answer, because when you do it for them, they have no incentive to ever learn how to do it for themselves. And everything about the Teams platform is built with the perspective that the users are really in control of their own destiny. And every time you go and do stuff for them magically behind the scenes, you take it out of their hands, they'll never learn it. And then they don't know how it works. They don't understand it. When they change devices, you have to do it all for them again. Like, I think you're setting yourself up to almost be a required element. And I would challenge you as IT professionals and IT leaders in your organization, you need to be leading out with how to solve these businessy problems, even in a church, but it needs to be about empowering and educating the users, not about doing things for them. I mean, in a sense, you want to work yourself out of a job if your job has been doing all the tediousness behind the scenes and managing permissions and that kind of thing.
Indeed. How do I fax from Teams? That's funny.
I'll bet there's a Ring Central fax plugin or something.
I'm sure there is.
Sadly, yeah. I'll bet that exists.
So there's Kevin asked a question about, I don't really get how SharePoint works as an intranet website. I get how file libraries work, but it seems like making a website within a SharePoint site is really clunky.
So it can be. So the thing you have to know about SharePoint is it's a Swiss Army knife. It was designed to do a lot of different things. At its heart, it is a document management platform. That's what it was built for originally. So it does document management better than anything else, but it also can do other things like basic web page of information or blog type things or news posting sites. And there are templates available from Microsoft and others that create sites to do that. So when you go into the SharePoint Admin Center, you can create a new site and you can decide what kind of site it is, whether it's a team site for collaboration work, or if it's an intranet style site. I can't remember what all the native options are, but you'll see that there are ways to do it. And you can do almost a blank site and then bring in a template, either again, from the Microsoft Marketplace for free or third party, some free, some paid. But the idea is it's a basic, simple web publishing platform. And so you can go create a site. I don't think David Drennan is with us today, but I know David Drennan from Second Baptist is well on his way to building out a replacement for their WordPress-driven intranet in SharePoint natively. And the idea is to present that right now as a tab inside of Teams, but ultimately as an app right there on the left-hand side once that SharePoint home site thing launches. So the great thing about SharePoint is it's pretty simple and it's really easy to go create sites and start playing with it and see what you can build out. There's some great templates to really get you really far, really fast.
All right. still looking, see if there's anything else. Good questions. Some folks asking about running help desk from Teams, if anybody's doing that. Looks like a few folks are. I'm sure there's lots of other follow-up conversations.
Yeah, God bless you. I've seen how that's working, or I see how that's done. I don't see how that's sustainable as you grow, but good luck to those that are trying it.
Hey,
I
Travis,
want to address this. I know Philip says he doesn't like to sync everything to the PC because there's only a 256 gig SSD. Both on Windows and Mac OS, know that natively you have files on demand, which means when you hit the sync button, it's not actually downloading all of that content to your local system. It just downloads tiny little placeholders. So it hardly takes up any space at all when you initially sync. And it's only when you open certain files that it will actually download the full content of that file for sync. So that's why it's so easy now to sync the entire team or your whole OneDrive, because you don't need enough capacity on the local device. Files on demand natively handles that for you. It'll even clean up after itself too.
Got about a minute left. The Google folks are joining back in.
Oh, sorry.
Last minute.
So this is why Microsoft is so much better than Google for those of you that are joining us now. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Hey, Travis.
Hey, yeah, go ahead.
Sometimes, you know, some of our people just put so much on OneDrive, and it's like 500 gig of data. They stick it up there. It's crazy, too much. And then they also got Dropbox. They can't get rid of Dropbox. I can get them to move away from Dropbox. So you got so many things they're trying to sync on it. It's crazy.
Oh, no doubt. You can totally get rid of Dropbox though. Just saying.
I can't get away from it. That's a problem.
We're in the process. We'll talk to you in about a month. We'll let you know how that goes.
But see, all of their Dropbox links are linked to a web-based project management system.
Sure, Planner can do that. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, Travis, I know we only have a minute left. One thing you might just mention, I think it's important when we talk about putting all this data in the cloud, the idea of, yes, it's all up there, but it's not necessarily backed up. And so the idea of your, backup solutions for your Microsoft 365.
No, that's great. I appreciate that question. So yes, your data that sits in Microsoft 365 is not backed up in the traditional sense of the way you would think about it, of like the 3-2-1 architecture and things like that. Microsoft will never commit to you that they do that. What they will commit to you is that they replicate your data, that there's always multiple copies of your data, that they're providing high availability for your data, but they'll never commit to backing it up, which means that you can't ask them to go restore a thing if you accidentally get rid of it. But you do have native capabilities like the ability to do point-in-time rollback, both inside of OneDrive and all SharePoint sites, including your team's file storage sites that live in SharePoint. So that's pretty cool, being able to roll back to a point in time. You also have the recycle bin, both in OneDrive and in SharePoint, and you even have the second stage recycle bin. So for the people that delete it and then delete it again, it's amazing how far back you can recover. But if you really, really, really want to protect your data, you absolutely can subscribe to a solution. There's some that you can purchase and use. You provide your own storage. There's others that are software as a service, so they go cloud to cloud. But there are solutions where you can have your data that sits in Microsoft's 365 cloud backed up, truly backup style. And there's different options for that. Typically, if you're doing a software as a service version, about the cheapest thing I've ever seen roughly is going to be around $3 to $4 per user per month. That's going to depend on what you're backing up, how big you are, how many users, that kind of thing. So awesome. It is doable, but there is a cost associated.
Thanks, Travis.
Thank you all.
Yes,
can we give a virtual applause to all of our presenters? Yeah. Thanks again to Travis, Jonathan, Sean, Carl for helping us get out some good content. Hopefully you enjoyed the content. If you would like to see more content, please email info@churchitnetwork.com with ideas for other things that you would like to hear us talking about. Next week will be How to Create a Budget That Approves Itself from Carl Peterson. So I'm really interested to hear about that. So we're getting ready to head into our breakout rooms. Matt Pugh has been working tirelessly to try to get all the breakout rooms working well. Please, if you're just joining us from the Google side, make sure that your username, your Zoom name matches your first name, last name. And if you could put your email address at the end, that would be super helpful to Matt as he tries to get you into the right rooms. So again, thank you so much to everybody. And Matt, if you want to shoot everybody into their rooms, it will be
Great.
amazing.
Hey, Jason, should we set a time limit on that for everyone, or just let it just hang open for as long as people want to hang out?
I think, what are we at, 3:14? So we kind of tentatively said 3:30, but the rooms will stay open as long as the breakout leaders want them to go. So